There's no sound today.
I think it's good. Here we are. Can you hear me?
Yes, Maharaj, we can hear now.
Jai Hare Krishna. Honest to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hare Krishna. So, welcome, dear devotees. We are very fortunate today to have the merciful association of His Holiness Bhakti Marga Swami Maharaj joining us from Canada. And another humble request, those of you who want to ask something or see Maharaj live, join in the Zoom, not over YouTube. And Maharaj will be giving a lecture on his experience of walking for Krishna. And let's hear from Maharaj. But before that, let me give a very short introduction of Maharaj. So Bhakti Marga Swami, popularly known as the Walking Monk, took to a monk's life in 1973 as a youthful 20-year-old. He is a direct disciple of ISKCON founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And Maharaj has been extensively walking over many continents, in fact, and especially traveled Canada 4 times on foot. His walks are extensively and internationally featured on radio, television, in newspaper and film. So let's hear from Maharaj about his experiences. And
Okay, thank you so much, Saman. And I appreciate your asking me to do this presentation, Tales from Trails. And I didn't want to leave out my episodes where I walked across the U.S. starting in 2015 to honor Prabhupada's 50th anniversary since he came to America. So I walked from Boston to San Francisco, covering it over like 2 summers and 1 fall. Thank you. Hare Krishna. My inspiration behind long distance walking came from reading the Vedic literatures, Srila Prabhupada's books. Oh, by the way, don't mind the bad, ugly background. I'm actually in the kitchen. The walking monk actually likes to, there's a cooking monk too, who likes to cook things for Krishna. So, I first started this extreme walking, getting the idea from people like Narada Muni that we read about, travel through the mountainsides and through orchards, through urban areas, rural areas, and also Vidura, who went for an extreme long walk, being disgusted and disappointed with the behavior of his nephew, Duryodhan. And we also have Balaram, who accepted as a curse as part of prayaschita, atonement for something that apparently he did wrong. And so he went for a long walk, going from place of pilgrimage to place of pilgrimage. We also have the story of Vamanadev, who's the dwarf incarnation. And with simply 3 steps, he covered the whole cosmos. Wow, I wish I could do that. But actually, to be honest with you, I like to enjoy the walks. Anytime I've taken up the challenge to go long distances, the longest would have been 8,500 kilometers, which is about 5,555 US miles. And that was the first time I did Canada, straight through from the West Coast to the East Coast, to as far as you can go until the Atlantic is there and you can't go any further. And, I've got a lot of coverage on the media for this. Krishna consciousness got known. I'd say on average, maybe 1,000 people per day would hear about Krishna through the walking. So that's big. It's really big, let's say, promotion or media coverage and communicating. One particular fellow who interviewed me on the East Coast, he was a radio broadcaster, and fortunately, we got on there at rush hour when everybody's in the car listening to the radio. And he said, so what are you going to do now that you're close to the East Coast, close to Newfoundland, which is close to where the Titanic sank? And I said, well, I was thinking about, no, it was his joke. He said, are you going to walk across the ocean to Ireland? Because if you can do that, I think I might join your movement. So it is kind of a mystical thing to be able to walk long distances for incredible stretches. Just some of the milestones is one of the slower days was 2.5 kilometers because I had some little bit of a dislocating in the ankle. And then the longest day was 99 kilometers, which is about 64 miles in one day. And that was in the province of Quebec. That's the French-speaking part of Canada. I don't know the language that well, so I thought I'd go through that place, what we call La Belle Province, the beautiful province. I'd go through there quickly. Generally, the mood is enjoy the walk. Don't be too anxious to get to the end. Although I did have a kind of a timeline. The weather starts getting real nasty in around, close to New Year's. As most of you know, those of you who are in New York City, you've had your share of stormy winters. So why did I do it? Why have I started these walks? Because in 95, I was projecting ahead, back in 1995. Prabhupada would be honored as having lived 100 years, and devotees all over the world were planning big events, offering gifts and so on, of some sort and kind. And His Holiness Lokanath Swami, who's the champion of Padayatra, he was planning something. And I thought, well, maybe I could do something solo instead of bullock carts and the whole complicated matter of trying to get everybody to come together. Why don't I just do it solo with a support person, one or two, and do it the kind of traditional way and get to meet people along the way and tell them about Prabhupada's contribution. I also had the chance then to, if I was to walk in this simple lifestyle, as Mahatma Gandhi coined the term, simple living and high thinking, which is something that Prabhupada picked up on and took it to another level. I thought, let me do what the ancients have done. Before there were automobiles, before there were planes and trains, let me walk it, let me take its course in the most natural and organic way possible. So I did that. I made a decision. I would walk, and I started on the East Coast in Canada, went through the mountains, which took a month, at the average of 42 kilometers a day or 25 miles. And some days were great, some days were not. I was learning to be like a real sannyasi in the sense that taking in whatever comes of its own course. Bad weather, good weather, rainy, stormy, windy, it didn't matter. And also maybe, let's say, interacting with or encountering wildlife, such as a grizzly bear, which did happen, and other experiences. I wanted to go for an adventure, and I wanted to make this walk an offering to Krsna and to Prabhupada, and get some benefits out of it personally. Maybe you lose a few pounds of karma, and let's say what else? Learn a few skills like how to deal with media and get on their good side, and how just to accept people in general, and just maybe subdue some of my own personal shyness, and let happen whatever is to happen. And so that's what took place. The mountains, for instance, were really incredible. They didn't allow for much sunlight to come in, especially in the month of April. And then finally, I got to the prairies, which you call the plains in America. And that was like areas which are ultra flat. And it was beautiful because you see sunrises and sunsets. You see God's eye blinking open and closed with the sun coming up and the sun's descent in the nighttime. And it was really like stepping into infinity. And it was the land of the friendly skies. I couldn't help but be awed by Krishna's creation in the form of clouds. I just had to be careful to stay on the road's shoulder in order to protect myself. And I learned, maybe the hard way once, don't put headphones on and start listening to your favorite devotional music or even a discourse by Prabhupada. You have to be very attentive. The biggest challenge I received from doing these major walks was walking on the tilt of the road. The road shoulder is slanted to accommodate the melting snow and rain so that it will drain off and end up in the ditch. So if you do that, you walk for hours and hours on a tilt like that, you will start to feel the pain. Like I had sciatic nerve issues on the left side. So I decided to go on the other side, kind of against the traffic or with the traffic and against both in order to get that kind of balance. I had options to go on walking trails, but in the spring and summertime, those areas are infested with mosquitoes. That was another challenge. Mosquitoes, black flies, horse flies, deer flies, stable flies, you name it. And how to deal with it? Well, chant Hare Krishna very sincerely. And when you do chant, do it like a ventriloquist, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Because if you open your mouth too much, some of these little creatures will fly into your mouth. And I didn't want to break my vows, the regulative principles of destroying these creatures. People would come and they would pull over, and this goes across the country from coast to coast. They would ask, "Would you like a ride?" That is, if they didn't know what I was already doing. And I would say something like, "Well, I'm not doing any rides, thank you very much. I'm actually doing a walk across the country." And then they go, "Whoa, what's that all about?" Says, "Well, I'm walking across the country, and it's to promote a spiritual healing for the nation." And they sometimes would go for clarification on that. And I would say, "Well, yeah, I'm walking for inner development. I got little demons inside of me, and I want to try to clear myself of them as much as possible. And I would like to encourage a culture of pilgrimage, that I'd like everyone to consider taking up this ancient practice." And, it depends on how long you get a chance to talk to people. They'll sometimes ask questions like, "Well, how many pairs of shoes does it take to walk across the country?" And I can, from experience, tell them it takes about 4 pair. And if they want to go a little deeper, we will. We could talk about spirituality, but I leave people with a brochure, with a book, or with a mantra card on it. And this way they go being happy and feeling good about having met a Hare Krishna monk. It was always a big triumph for me if I saw reporting done about the walk and Hare Krishna was mentioned in there, and Srila Prabhupada as well. And it was just nice to connect with people. I'll give you an example. When I did walk the US, I came to a place in Pennsylvania, I forget the name of the town, and it was Friday afternoon, and you're not going to get much attention from media on Friday afternoon when everyone's just rushing, trying to get home, including journalists. But one journalist did catch up. He was an African American, and he met me and my support guy Gopal, and he asked all the questions, and he looked us up on the internet while I was writing the article, and he put the whole thing honorific title, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And in the article, he wrote about transmigration of the soul, the Mahamantra. He didn't leave anything that wasn't spiritual. And initially he came with some interest to see me on the road. And but it ended up that he really was moved by the project. And he was very sedate. Initially, he was very straightforward with it. So why are you walking? Blah, 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 hardly a smile on his face. He was a real fancy dresser. He was really spiffy, a cool guy that way. And then after myself and Gopal finished our little routine of talking, then he said, I think it's just great what you're doing. Can I give you a big hug? So it was like that. And I remember meeting other journalists along the way. Like say, for instance, one fellow in Northern Ontario worked with a newspaper, and he was hesitant to do my story. He was busy. It was another one of those Friday afternoons. And I walked right into the newspaper place. And he said, oh, yeah, I heard about what you're doing. Yeah, I got a couple of calls. Okay, let's go in the conference room. And so I told him what the walk was all about, and, being like a man of steel, and being like an ascetic, and taking all the hardships. And he was very touched. And he said, he started to change a little bit. He wrote everything down on his notepad, whatever I was giving him. And then he pushed the notepad to the side and his pen and took off his glasses. And he just stroked his hair like this. And then he started to ask interesting questions, personal. And something like, okay, so now what would you say if you're having a real bad day? And how do you cope with all that negativity? And so I got back to him speaking about the spiritual platform and how we are spiritual beings. We're not these bodies, yet we relate so much to them, and they're a source of anguish and problems. And if we get back onto the spiritual platform, our true identity, there will be less pain. So he asked more questions, and it was almost like I was a psychiatrist or something like that. It was a beautiful encounter. I met another fellow who was in a sports car. He's a Filipino Canadian. I'm going back to Canada right now. And it was another Friday afternoon. And he said, I read about you in the paper, and I just wanted to talk to you for a bit. Is that okay? I said, yeah, sure. And then I sat into the sports car in the passenger seat and said, well, I was going steady with a girl. We were very serious with each other. And I just wanted to ask you, because you're a monk, how the problem is that she just recently ran off with my best friend. So I'm having a real difficult time with it. So again, an opportunity arose to talk to a fellow human being who's on the road. And the road is really like, which is a metaphor of what it means to move through life and go through your tough times. Oftentimes when a motorist would pull over and they would just ask for the ride, and I said, I can't take any rides. And if we came to a sort of a standstill talk, he said, how are you doing? And how's your relationships? Then as soon as you talk about relationships, like whether it's wife or husband or this or that, suddenly, wow, you've opened up a whole Pandora's box or something like that. Okay, well, I'll tell you, it's not going very well, and I'm not sure what to do about it. An interesting couple in California, as I just left Nevada, they pulled over and they said, can we give you a ride? You look like you're by yourself. And I said, well, yes, I am. That's kind of the idea. I have a support guy who checks on me once in a while to see if I'm still alive. And they had a good chuckle over that. And the guy said that he was in the passenger seat, said, well, I've got my challenges and I'm just trying to stay out of jail, And then they both spoke, we interacted for quite a bit. And the woman, she was saying, well, we're trying to have a child. We just can't have a baby. We've tried and tried. Maybe can you bless us, so that we can have a baby? And so then I I said, well, I guess I could do a kind of a blessing, because yesterday I was in Culver City, and I did a dog blessing. I did a, people from the Animal Abuse Society, I forget their name, they came to me, asked me if I could do a blessing for animals, particularly dogs that were abused and took on, had new owners. So that happened, that transpired on a super hot day in the desert. And but we had some trees. Unfortunately, the sun keeps moving, and you're baking. So I did an arti, the picture of Prabhupada, and then I offered all the articles. Anavad Yangi, my god sister, who lives in a place called Stagecoach in Nevada, where the famous movie The Misfits was filmed back in '61 or '62. And she gave me all her arti paraphernalia to do a full arti. And then the dogs were so behaved. They were better than their masters. And they just loved the whisk. They were looking at it and the water that I sprinkle on them and the flame. And then after that was done, we had a little kirtan, myself and two brahmachari associates. And I also spoke from the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya, Sampane, Brahmanega Mahaschiri, Shuni Chaiva Swapakaita, Pandita Samadarshina. And the translation of that verse, paraphrasing, is that if you are a true wise person, that you have a certain vision, and your vision is that every entity is spiritual. Every being has a spirit within, and so we're all equal in that regards. Whether it's an elephant, a cow, a gentle, wise man, a dog eater, a man who eats dogs, and a dog itself. So they just love that verse. So we sold some books. I believe we had some prasadam at that time. But those are the kind of things that go on. I have gone along and given blessings to this particular couple that says, please get back to me and let me know if anything has happened. And they didn't get back to me, unfortunately. But I hope everything went okay. I have given blessings, done prayers on the side of the road when people ask for it. And sometimes I got blessings. One gentleman from the indigenous nation, tribe, we call it nation in Canada. And he was giving me his blessings. He had some sage, and he kind of flung it around in the air, almost like incense, and smudge sticks, yeah. And then water as well. He took out of the bottled water some water, and he sprinkled it in different directions and on me. And he did it in his local language. And I asked, what did you do? He said, well, I was just saying that you be blessed, that you will have strong legs to be able to continue your mission. Things like that. So the whole idea is to connect with people. And I believe that whether you're doing it on the road or in a building in downtown Brooklyn or Manhattan, or, our business is to carry the missionary spirit and to get out there and meet people and encourage them on the spiritual path, to take that journey which will allow them to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, one thing about Americans is that a little different from Canadians. Americans really do believe in a God. There's a lot more, I'd say, fanaticism perhaps, but there's also a lot more sense of that there is a deity. There is a God out there who's a person. And Canadians are a little more subdued about that, maybe a little more skeptical. It was interesting to compare notes between the northern and southern countries. And of course, I've also traveled Ireland, which is very rainy and wet. And I traveled Israel, which is super dry. And I've gone through Guyana and Trinidad and the Mauritius and the Fiji Islands. And I've done chunks of India. Those are the major places that I've gone to walk. And it's always nice to see that people are having different experiences. However, everyone really goes through the same challenges. of being born, dying, of carrying on with some disease, such as today it's COVID, and dealing with old age. We all experience that. And it's whether it's during Vedic times or now, there isn't much difference in people's appetites towards the different stimuli that exist in the world. So by walking, I'm trying to encourage people to go more the simple way, to willingly take up austerity. And the first time I walked, I was 43. The next time when I came around, it was 50. I had turned 50, and I was able to tell people in our tradition, when you're 50, you're supposed to seriously get down to downscaling, simplifying, and start giving some of your acquiescence or life, some of your accumulations to others, whether it be children, grandchildren, neighbors, whatever, and learn the art of simplicity and self-discipline. Each time that I walk these long distances, the walking just gets better. However, now I turned 68 not so long ago, and I'm having some arthritic issues in the knees and a little bit in the ankles. And for the first time, I'm understanding what aging is all about. And I don't like it. I really don't. But I certainly have to take care of the machinery, and so that I can continue my service as best as I can. In America, I was in Ohio, and one woman, she was walking, and I was walking, and she was on one trail, I was on another one, and we met on the highway. And I just started talking. I struck up a conversation, and I said, "Do you do this regular?" She said, "Yes, I do." And said, "What's your main reason for doing this every day?" And she said, "Well, I do this so that I can be very fit, so I can serve my Lord and I can serve his people." And I just thought it was the perfect answer. A half hour passed, and I went further down, and a fellow in one of those more upscale kind of pickup trucks pulled over. He was in a shirt and a tie, like definitely like a corporate kind of individual. He pulled over and said, "Okay, so you're a monk. Okay, can you give me some words of wisdom?" And I said, "Well, yes." And I could tell by his energy he wasn't there to stay for a long time. So I said, "Well, okay, we're human beings, you and I. So human life is meant for cultivating your brighter side, your spiritual side." And I also said that we both have legs. That's what humans have, two legs. And so these legs were made for walking. And so those were my messages. I actually ended up on a spiritual note. So he appreciated it, and he went on. And I'm sure he went on to tell some friends. People are fascinated by monks. They really are, especially the Savran ones. And I've been told, let's say, I've been called many things, usually out of affection. Somebody called me Gandhi. Somebody called me Jesus. To another person was called, "Hey, Buddha boy." Someone called me a moving traffic cone. And yeah, so once in a while, you'll also get hooligans, screaming, yelling something out that is a little either profane or just insulting. Like one guy in British Columbia, he was in a red sports car, and he drove slowly, said, "Get out of town." And that was in 95. People are less judgmental these days, I find, more accepting. And I felt kind of bad about that. I felt bad for me, but I felt more bad for him as my steps went forward. I said, "Why would he do that? He's doing that out of insecurity." If I was to meet him a little bit later on, I could approach him in two different ways. I could be, let's say, equally nasty, and I could say, "You told me to get out of town. Well, I wasn't thinking about staying in your town. It's not worth staying in your town." So I could be nasty, but that's not usually my style. It did cross my mind. And but I ended up thinking that if I was to meet him, you made a comment, and is it possible for us to chat, because I didn't have an opportunity to respond to you. You spoke to me, but there was no two-way conversation. So we're good. We're humans, right? We're reciprocal people. So let's talk a little bit, you know. And if that did transpire, I would have been able to open up the books of the Bhagavad Gita's truth, but it didn't happen. So I did encounter some attacks by people with words, but it was very few. I was attacked by wasps once when I was in the forest and I was dealing with the call of nature, and I wasn't sure where I was stepping, but 7 or 8 nasty wasps came in to my backside, and it was excruciatingly painful. It was actually hard to sit down for the next few days. I know it's a little embarrassing to say, but as a monk and as a sannyasi, you're ready to, take these kind of, let's say, reverses or challenges, and it's all okay in the end. And yeah, difficult weather conditions. I was attacked by birds. Some birds are highly territorial, and they almost like they're going for your eye. And that's truthful. They're usually more just there to scare you. If you're in their breeding grounds or nesting grounds, they'll come after you like in a flock. And I must admit, I was telling people I had walked across Canada, but I actually cheated. I ran for about a quarter of a mile to get away from the birds. Yeah. So you encounter dogs who are kind of mangy and nasty, and so you have to deal with all kinds of scenarios. And but overall, it was really nice. And I got to eat less because when you hang around in a temple, the food is so rich and it's so tempting, and you almost have an obligation to take more than you really need. And so here I had a chance to start making wraps, and we were making sandwiches, myself and my support guy. And I was really loving the simplicity of it all. I'm actually simpleton, and I'm not big on devices and computers. I never had a computer. I just had this little old phone, which didn't work for us in the beginning. And I enjoy my life as a sannyasi and as one who gets a chance to walk. These days, I walk a little bit every day, just keep in shape, and to make sure that, like right now, I'm just working on trying to deal with that little bit of a limp I have as a result of walking on slope in the road. And I know I have to be a little careful these days. Yeah. Always, I get a chance to meet people. 2 days ago, I was walking on Bloor Street in Toronto. It's a nice street. There's a lot of pedestrian-friendly dynamics going on. And I came to the corner of Bloor and Bathurst, and there was a fellow from Nigeria there. He's had his bongo drums, and he didn't. He stopped. He wasn't playing at the moment. As soon as he saw me, he just Hare Krishna. He did the whole mantra, and he kept going with the biggest smile, and he was greeting people that way. So I find that if you're walking out and you're meeting people, and you're just out there for them, they will respond. At least some of them will. And they're happy to see us. They're very happy to see us. In fact, this fellow from Nigeria, he spent some time in New York, I guess it was Brooklyn, and that's how he got to know the Maha Mantra. He even wore dhotis, and he was saying to me, Namaste and Haribol, and he even had a shika at one time, a tuft of hair in the back. So we got to talking, and that would not have happened if I was in regular clothes. So that's what I like to do. I like to be out there in the world, and it is a beautiful place. when you walk in the countryside, it's like an IMAX screen everywhere. Every day there's a new adventure. I saw major battles with birds, and like what was it, a blue heron with a eagle, and small blackbirds chasing a crow, and all kinds of things. And by the way, crows and ravens can get nasty. They do go for the eye. There's one part of the northern Canada in Ontario where I walked, and every day you'd see several dead moose struck by automobiles. So this one moose carcass was there on the side of the road, and there was a raven there close to the neck. And when I got close, the raven, flew away. And I looked to see, where is the moose damaged? Where did he get hit? I consider them beautiful animals, by the way. And I saw he looked pretty in good shape. I couldn't see any damage, but he was hit. And I saw that his eyeball was missing. In other words, the raven. So this might be gross, but when you're on the road, you do meet with a lot of roadkill, unfortunately. And so when you're walking on your journey, you meet with birth and death and disease and old age. You do. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time. I guess I should leave some time for your questions. And while you're thinking about them, in less than a minute, half a minute, I'm just going to check on my doll. Okay? Hold on.
Hare Krishna devotees, if you have any personal or general questions at this time, please feel free to ask Maharaj, who has experienced what to do during a pilgrimage, and his whole life he has been dedicating to doing pilgrimages.
Coming. Okay, I'm back. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, anyone want to ask Maharaj some questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept our humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna. How are you?
Good, we're good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Maharaj, it's really nice that you're sharing so many wonderful experiences. So out of all of your experiences, which one stood out the most to you? Like which one's your most touching, or is there something that
somebody asked me that on my first walk. Somebody from CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, came out to see me with their tape recorder. That was in '96, and so that's when tape recorders were still popular. And she asked me all the questions. When did you start walking, and why are you walking, and how many pairs of shoes? And now that you're almost finished your walk, this is in Halifax, the city of Halifax. Now that you're almost done walking, tell me, what was the greatest event that ever happened in your life? And when she asked me that, I just got kind of stage fright. I didn't know what to say. I just went blank, and I didn't know where to go with it. And then it dawned on me. And I said, well, the greatest thing that ever happened on this walk is that you're standing there, and I'm standing looking at you. We're looking at each other. You're asking me this question, and that's the greatest thing that ever happened on this walk. And so then she said, oh, yes, I know what you mean. Living for the moment, living in the present. And I said, yes, exactly. And, living in the moment, being very attentive to what you're doing currently is very much stepping into the mode of goodness. When you are walking, there's a tendency to reminisce or to think about the past. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. There's also a good amount of time, maybe the equal amount of time, is given to future plans, dreams. What am I going to do next year, or when I finish this walk? But a good portion of it also is what's happening now. And I feel that's being very much in the mode of goodness. being here, being present, and just paying attention to the details of what's current right now. So that's the way I answer the question. And
Thank you.
sometimes people ask me too, what's your favorite place where when you're walking, your favorite place? And I say, wherever I am, that's the best place.
That's really nice. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you, Parvati. That's your daughter.
Yes, Karangi.
Gaurangi Jai.
Say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Gaurangi Jai. Good. And do we have any other questions?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. So Maharaj, how did you take care of prasadam? How did you sleep? Like walking is so tiring also. How did you take care of your health? Like,
Well, my support person who drives his vehicle, because I've had different people come along. Most people can't sacrifice 6 or 7 months out of the year, but that person would do a lot of legwork, so to speak. My support guy would go and purchase produce. My favorite food on the road was wraps. Just get some tortillas, raw material, get some hummus, and lay chop up some avocados, and it's so colorful. It's you have to put a little hing in there, of course, you know.
yeah, to make it more tasty.
And in this way, that would be our meal at around 10 o'clock in the morning, and then later in the afternoon, usually I would end up cooking on the side of the road or at a campsite. And we do like a khichdi or sometimes pasta, like that. Something simple, nothing complicated, you know. And so my support person would find out where we would stay for the night. He would contact the media. He would, buy any provisions, maintain the vehicle, find the route that we're supposed to be on, because even though you may have maps and your phones, it doesn't always tell the truth, you know, in terms of, well, are the construction workers on the road? The map doesn't tell you that. And so, it was like that. By the way, I like the days with old maps and you pull them all out and it's all like,
Maharaj.
I don't like
so
these
Maharaj,
days.
that the routes weren't planned before, like
The routes? Oh, you're sounding like a robot at the moment.
Mataji, your connection is unstable.
I'm afraid.
Sorry.
The connection isn't too good right now.
Okay. Yes, Maharaj, your journey has been amazing. The first time when I saw you or saw your video, I was like, wow, how is he taking care of his daily needs? Because sometimes you don't get temples for days.
Well, what was nice about the US, we stayed in a motel almost every day by a Patel motel. And sometimes we'd have to pay, but rarely, because the population is more dense. And in Canada, there's big stretches where there's less people. So in Canada, we did more tenting. You know, we'd set up a tent, and that's what my support guy would do. So we'd sleep in a tent at night, you know. Sometimes it was tough because it would rain all night, and there's nothing worse than having water come into your tent at night. Oh, it just drives you crazy. And sometimes where the wind blows like crazy, and there's a full body weight of 2 or sometimes 3 men, full-grown men, with a hard time holding the tent down. But that's all part of the fun. Yeah, so people were generous. We would be invited into people's homes, local people, and sometimes, Indian community was super wonderful as usual. With the Gujaratis, they said, "Oh, you can stay in their motel rooms, and you are Swamiji, we will cook for you too." So they do. It was like that. Yeah.
Maharaj, just one more question from my side. is this is a little different from the topic that we discussed, but I really wanted to ask you. I was hearing your lecture at ISKCON Ujjain after the departure of His Holiness Bhakti Swami Guru Maharaj,
Yes.
and you were mentioning about the Kirtan standards in ISKCON. So
Right.
different places, different things go on nowadays. People have their own manufactured tunes, mantras, and
Mhm.
so on. But do you have any repository where I can go and see the seminars that you have given? Or because it's really interesting to know. Recently, I was hearing from Jayadvait Maharaj also that Prabhupada's Kirtan standards were a lot different from than the ones that are seen in ISKCON nowadays. In many ISKCONs, not everywhere, obviously.
Right. Well, it's a big topic, and to direct you somewhere, I don't know if there's anything recorded, to be honest with you. I have done some presentations. I just put together my own little seminar. I know that there's a ministry that deals with this. You can check with Ekalavya, and I was informed by Ekalavya that very soon they're coming together to discuss the Kirtan standards. So they'll have their own seminar. I have one that goes for about 4 or 5 or 6 hours, depending on how much time people have. It also includes the simple dance step that Prabhupada gave us, how to play kartals, and everything about what's the mood behind kirtan, and what are the mantras we should chant, what are the ones that you should definitely not chant, and what are the ones that you can get away with. So I was planning to do that, and then here, and then COVID came in. I did this in Washington. I went to a few places and did the Kirtan standards in some different countries, and it's always appreciated. I remember doing it in Hawaii and Honolulu, and I had quotes from Shruti Kirti, and he was right there. He was one of the persons listening. So to answer your question, is it available? If you want, I can come over. I can come over sometime once the virus is allowing it. It's not a good idea to go across the border now. It's not a good idea, basically, to just to get out the door too much, unless if you're going to go for a brisk walk and not get close to people. But that's one thing I could offer to do.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your wonderful experiences. I hope devotees will hear it on YouTube later and relish it. And thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. Hope to see you one day in New York, probably. And
Thank you.
thank you so much for this wonderful lecture. Hare Krishna.
All right. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Jai Jai.
Dandavat Pranam Maharaj.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol. Take care.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.